it's time to fix the mess that we've made. We've duplicated the mesh setup. We're handling movement differently, but following the same structural logic twice. This seems small at the moment, but when we get to adding health, destruction, effects, this will all begin to compound. Every shared feature means twice the work for us, but also potentially means twice the bugs. Inside of the pawn class as well, we're currently using the entire mesh as a collider, which really isn't ideal for this type of game. Most kind of arcadey action games like this actually use a trick to make the player feel a little bit smarter than they may actually be. When you think that you've dodged something skillfully, but you actually just scraped by, that feels good, but that's because your collider is probably a little bit smaller than the enemy's collider. And we're going to want to implement something like that so that our game starts to actually feel interesting to interact with. Just a minor form of psychological manipulation, but it makes the game feel fair, even when the maths would say otherwise. The way that we'll solve this is by using a sphere collider as the new root instead of the mesh. The mesh will just act as completely collision-free decoration. Both classes will need this, so we may as well build this just once and share components and features like that across all of the classes. The way that we do this is with something called inheritance. I've mentioned before, the Unreal Engine is a very heavily inheritance-based piece of software, so we'll be following the same kind of conventions. It basically means that we can code something once in what is called a parent or a base class. We can then make child classes of that, which will inherit all of the components, the features, the systems that we input. For example, we've seen that actors provide a transform, a location, rotation, scale in the world, and then pawns take that information and build upon it, with being given the mechanics to be possessed and many other things. That's enough talk. Let's see this in action. So let's get to creating our new base class that will help us see the system in practice. If we go back into the blueprints and the core folder, we're going to create something completely fresh. I right click in the window, we'll go to blueprint class again and create a brand new pawn. I'm going to switch this from being called pawn underscore something to BP underscore PlaneBase instead of pawn. They're all going to be planes, so we may as well be clear with our naming convention here. Inside of our new class, we'll go up to the components and we're going to add that sphere component I mentioned. We're not looking for this one here. This is a solid 3D visual sphere. We just want a colliding bound. So if we search for the word collision, we can see here we have a few different options. We want our sphere collider, which will apply this just here. And we can do the same thing we've done before. We can drag this onto the default scene root to make this our new root component. We can then go back up to the add button. We still want our static mesh. This just won't be handling collision anymore. We'll do the same thing again. We're going to go to our static mesh over here and we'll select our SM underscore plane hero. With the static mesh still selected, we can go down to the collision section over here. And we can actually just use this drop down and tell it to do no collision detection whatsoever. We can also turn off the overlap generate events. This just makes sure that nothing is being checked against the static mesh at any point. Perfect, because we want this to be visual. It means it doesn't need to get added to the collision stack. It's just kind of sat there being rendered. If we select our sphere collider as well, we can make a couple of changes here. If we drop this down in the right-hand side in the collision section again, we want to change this from overlap all dynamic, and we can actually make this more distinct now. And we'll tell this to be classed as a pawn collision. So we'll see that this changes the collision preset to pawn. The object type is now tracked as a pawn, and it's done a few things over here. Now, we're not going to leave it at this. If we wanted full flexibility, we'll take this as the default preset, but we can customize this by dropping this down again and selecting custom. So we still have this set as a pawn, we still have the collision enabled settings as we want, and we have all of this set by default. We may find that we want to come back in though and make this not overlap other pawns or block other pawns, do something different with world static, and we now have the option to change these if we wanted. We won't do that right now. We'll do that based on testing and seeing how the project unfolds. With that done, this is putting us in a really good position though. Every child class will now inherit this setup. So this means we've configured this once, and we never really need to think about it again. So now we can start looking at our shared functionality as well in the event graph, the kind of things that we want to share between the two classes. As always, we're going to grab the event begin overlap and delete this one. And for the movement, there are a few things to consider. Once again, purely just based on the recreation of the example project we're trying to hit some level of parity with. There's a small feature, if you really look at what's happening, where the planes and the player don't move or align movement at the start of them spawning in. They play a small animation, they animate up the screen for maybe a second or two, and then they allow movement to go sideways. So we're going to do something very similar. We're going to freeze or pause any movement input until that animation is rolled out. We'll get to the animations in the polish section, but we just need to, again, think ahead of what we're going to need to account for, and we can program that in now. So let's start with that. We're going to want to do some very simple logical if and check. So if we pull from our execution pin, we're going to search for a branch, and from the branch, we can take the condition here. We'll promote this to a variable straight away. Call this one B, movement enabled. We'll hit compile and make sure that this is defaulting to true. So if movement is enabled, which we're going to want to do whilst we're just debugging before we have that animation set up, if movement is enabled, then we'll allow the enemy to fly side to side and move down the screen, and we'll allow the player to fly side to side based on the input. If not, then that means we're probably in the animation, and we'll call the false function here and stop any movement from happening. So this just sets us up later on when we get to those features. By thinking ahead, we don't need to completely refactor the code again. Now, the next thing is both classes will need some type of movement. But like I've mentioned, we are programming the movement slightly differently. So we can't share the actual movement code because there's not the same type of movement being used. But what we can do is share the logic flow and the concepts of the functionality that we will need. We can do this by having a look at functions now. So on the left-hand side, we have this function category just here. Kind of like events, we can create our own custom functions, and then we'll just have logic called when that function is called, the same way that we've been doing with events in the past. So if we press plus here, and I'm going to call this new function we've made handle movement. And you can see one of the difference here, and actually one of the core benefits of using functions over events is that they do very much the same thing. They respond to being called, but here we get our own function graph. So it's kind of tucked away, and again, keeping things nice and tidy. Now, we're not going to actually handle any of the movement function in here. The way that this will be used is we're going to override this function in our child classes later, but we need this to exist to have something to call. What we do want to do is we're going to go back into the event graph. We want to take our handle movement function, and we're just going to drop that on the true pin. So if movement is enabled, then we're going to call the handle movement function. So again, it becomes nice and readable. And when we do get to actually implementing this, we can get an idea of exactly what's going to be happening. So this is kind of simple for now. You'll see this unfold and make a lot more sense when we actually begin implementing things. This is one of those things where I could try and spend 5 to 10 minutes describing what we'll do later, but I think it'll just make much more sense simply implementing it as we go. Another thing that both plane classes are going to need, the enemy and the player, and bosses or whatever you wanted to start inheriting from this class, they're all going to need to be destroyed or killed off at some point. So whilst we're here, we may as well go and add another function, and I'll call this one handle death. Again, we're not going to put anything in here just now, but one thing that we can do with this function, the generic things like everything is going to need to play a sound effect or a particle effect when they die. We could do that in this class here because that is a universal function. That's something that regardless of the type of plane, they all need to show some kind of feedback when that happens. So we can do the universal functionality here. And then if there's something unique to the individual plane, then we can override again the functionality that's happening here and then do something on top of that. So just a kind of rough idea of how inheritance works and how we can make use of that reusable code, saving us time and effort as we go. Now, the final thing that I can imagine that both of the plane classes will need is the movement speed. And we kind of already know that. If we look at our own code, one of the few things that both of them have is, if we open both their event graphs, PlaneBase, which is the player, has a lot more functionality, so there's a lot more variables here, but it does have movement speed. And then the pawn is slightly different, simplified, whereas we're not doing the move left check in the player version, we are still using movement speed. So things like this are what we're looking for in our base classes. Things that we've had to implement more than once is something that we could just dump straight in to the base class. So in here, all I'll do is I'll create a new variable, call this one movement speed, and we'll change this one to a float, hit compile, save. And now anytime that we might need to use those between the classes, that's available and ready to go. Again, we don't actually need to make use of it yet, but this is just setting the groundwork for us to have a more smooth and pleasant transition. And really that is our base class fleshed out as much as we need right now. We can come back and add things later, but we have the shared components that we need, the unified collision, the movement ready to implement in the individual child classes, same for the death, and then the speed variable ready to use as well. So just to have a very quick look at how we can make use of this base class, we'll add the full functionality a little bit later, but a very quick demonstration. If we go back into our content drawer, we can right click on the PlaneBase, and up here we have the option to create child blueprint class. If we click this one, this will create a new blueprint for us. This will inherit everything from PlaneBase. I'll call this one BP_planePlayer. And then if we double click to open this one, we can see that this now comes pre-built with our sphere and our static mesh. We also have a few other things here as well. If we click the override option, we can see actually the functions that we've created manually, handle death and handle movement, specifically from our base class. If we click these, this will give us a function that we can then start using the parents version of the function, plus, as I've mentioned, doing our own thing on top of that. I'll press Ctrl-Z to get rid of that one for now. We don't want to do any overriding just yet, and we don't need to change anything just yet. But I wanted to show you another way as well that we can go about adding classes based on those that we've made. So if we go back into the content drawer one more time, right click here, and this time we're going to go to a blueprint class, something that may not be super obvious, but a lot of people think that this is restricted to Unreal Engine classes and those created by the Unreal Engine developers. But in fact, as soon as we've created a class, we can actually find those here. So if I look for PlaneBase, we can see here, PlaneBase is a child of a pawn, and a pawn, as I've said, is a child of an actor. And our plane player is then a child of PlaneBase. So we can actually now select our own classes from our class list here in the editor. So we'll select PlaneBase again, select this one, and of course we're going to call this one BP_planeEnemy. So both of these are now ready to go as we start fleshing things out. Just wanted to mention as well that there are multiple ways that you can make use of your base classes when you have them ready and set up. With that done, the base class is ready though. As I've said, we have the shared components, the shared functionality, and a unified collision setup. Next, we're going to refactor the player first. We'll take the big one, go through the chunky code that we're going to move across, and we'll focus on the enemy afterwards. And again, just wanted to mention, this is the type of thing that inside of the course, I would be able to make an emphasis and go much deeper into these topics. So if that's the sort of thing that interests you, if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of inheritance versus components, exactly what inheritance can provide on a deeper level than we'll be able to in this smaller project, then again, consider signing up to the email list below. You'll get notified if the course goes ahead. You'll be offered early access to the course and, of course, discounts to go along with that. Otherwise, you won't hear from me. At the moment, I'm purely gauging interest, and I just need to know how many people would want to see much more in-depth content than we're going through right now. Links for that and much more in the description down below. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you next time.